tea because this shocked even Hollywood insiders. Ana de Armas didn't just talk about Tom Cruise. She exposed the hidden cost of being linked to him. No love story, no denial, just pressure, silence, and a connection the world misunderstood. What she revealed wasn't romantic, it was unsettling. And once you hear what really happened behind the scenes, you'll never look at celebrity relationships the same way again. From the very first moment Ana de Armas and Tom Cruise were seen together, something felt undeniably different. It wasn't just the flashing cameras or the glamorous red carpets, where celebrities often perform for attention. This time, there was a quiet energy that couldn't be manufactured. The way they stood beside each other, exchanged subtle smiles, and interacted with natural ease made people pause. It didn't look rehearsed. It didn't feel like publicity. It felt real, and that's exactly why it captured everyone's attention. Hollywood is no stranger to rumored relationships. Every year, new pairings are created, promoted, and forgotten just as quickly. But this connection sparked curiosity for a different reason. There were no dramatic interviews, no coordinated social media posts, and no carefully timed public appearances designed to dominate headlines. Instead, there was restraint. A calm, understated presence followed them wherever they appeared, making people wonder what was happening when the cameras weren't rolling. Sometimes silence speaks louder than any announcement. And in this case, the lack of noise only made the story grow. What truly fascinated fans was how unlikely the pairing seemed on the surface. Tom Cruise, a global icon with decades of blockbuster success, represents discipline, precision, and complete control over his career and public image. Ana de Armas, though already celebrated in her own right, is still in a phase of exploration, taking risks, choosing diverse roles, and defining her long-term path in the industry. They were at very different stages of their lives, yet when seen together, that difference didn't create distance. Instead, it created balance. Ana later hinted that working alongside someone like Tom Cruise was both inspiring and intimidating. Being in his orbit meant witnessing a level of dedication few actors ever reach. His intense focus, perfectionist mindset, and tireless work ethic set an almost impossible standard. For many, that could feel overwhelming. But for Ana, it became a source of motivation. Rather than feeling overshadowed by his presence, she felt pushed to rise higher, to sharpen her craft, and to trust her own abilities. What stood out most in her reflections was the emotional tone. There was no trace of bitterness or defensiveness. Instead, there was gratitude. She spoke about respect, deep, genuine respect that formed the foundation of their connection. Whatever existed between them wasn't driven by romance or spectacle. It was built on mutual admiration, professional trust, and a shared understanding of what it means to live under constant scrutiny. And perhaps that's why this story resonated so deeply. It wasn't about scandal or confirmation. It was about two people finding common ground in an industry that rarely allows authenticity to survive. In a world obsessed with labels and conclusions, their connection remained undefined, and maybe that's what made it so compelling. When Ana finally spoke candidly about the situation, what surprised people most wasn't what she said, it was what she didn't say. She neither confirmed nor denied a romantic relationship with Tom Cruise, and in Hollywood, that kind of restraint is rare. Yet that silence carried more meaning than any direct answer ever could. It suggested complexity, caution, and a desire to protect something personal from being reduced to headlines. Anna chose one word to describe the connection: complicated, not because of conflict, betrayal, or hidden drama, but because of circumstances that existed far beyond their control. She explained that when two well-known figures are constantly under public scrutiny, nothing is ever simple. Ordinary moments lose their innocence. A shared smile, a conversation, or even standing next to each other suddenly becomes a story. Every glance is analyzed. Every appearance turns into speculation. The world starts writing a narrative before the people involved even understand their own feelings. She openly admitted how difficult it is to form genuine human connections when privacy doesn't exist. In normal life, relationships are allowed to grow slowly, quietly, and sometimes imperfectly. But under the spotlight, that natural process disappears. Emotions are rushed, labels are forced, assumptions replace truth. According to Anna, even the space to understand what something means can be taken away when millions of strangers are watching and judging in real time. One of her most honest admissions was that not all feelings are meant to be explained publicly. Some emotions need room to breathe. Others need the freedom to fade without becoming a spectacle. But when fame enters the equation, even endings don't belong to the people living them. Everything becomes public property, often misunderstood and oversimplified. What made Anna's words resonate so deeply was that they weren't focused on Tom Cruise as a global icon. She didn't speak about his fame, status, or influence. Instead, she spoke about the emotional toll of living a life where privacy is a luxury, not a right. Her reflections weren't defensive or bitter. They were calm, thoughtful, and deeply human. In that moment, Anna shifted the conversation away from gossip and toward reality. She reminded people that behind every headline are real emotions, real uncertainty, and real vulnerability. Her honesty struck a chord because it wasn't about confirming a relationship. It was about revealing the hidden weight of navigating personal connections when the world refuses to look away. One of the most revealing parts of Anna D. Armas's reflections was her quiet acknowledgement of just how different their worlds truly are. On the surface, both she and Tom Cruise exist within the same industry, attend the same events, and share a deep love for filmmaking. But beneath that surface, their lives move to very different rhythms shaped by experience, responsibility, and timing. Tom Cruise represents a legacy built over decades. His career is the result of relentless discipline, intense focus, and an almost unmatched level of control. Every decision he makes is calculated, every project carefully chosen, and every aspect of his life deeply structured around work. He isn't just an actor, he's an institution, carrying the weight of expectations that come with being one of Hollywood's most enduring figures. That level of consistency doesn't happen by accident. It's built through sacrifice, routine, and a life organized around long-term commitment. Anna, by contrast, is still in a powerful phase of becoming. While she has already achieved remarkable success, she remains in a stage of exploration and growth. She's taking risks, embracing diverse roles, and allowing herself the freedom to evolve. More importantly, she's learning who she wants to be not only as an actress, but as a woman navigating fame, ambition, and personal fulfillment. Her journey is defined by movement, discovery, and possibility rather than structure and permanence. Anna subtly hinted that timing played a crucial role in shaping whatever connection existed between them. She suggested that sometimes two people can share deep respect, admiration, and even emotional closeness, yet still find themselves walking in different directions. It's not a failure or a flaw, it's reality. Life doesn't always align neatly, and meaningful connections don't always lead to lasting relationships. She emphasized that not every powerful bond is meant to last forever. Some are meant to teach, challenge, and transform us before gently letting go. Accepting that truth, she implied, requires emotional maturity, the ability to value what a connection offered, without forcing it to become something it was never meant to be. This, she made clear, was never about incompatibility or conflict. There was no bitterness in her words, no sense of regret. It was simply about life moving at different speeds. When two people are growing in different directions, even the strongest respect may not be enough to bridge the gap. And sometimes, the bravest choice isn't holding on but understanding when to step forward separately, carrying the lessons with you, if nothing was ever confirmed. Why did this story refuse to fade away? Why did it continue to live in conversations, headlines, and fan discussions long after the initial sightings? The answer is surprisingly simple. People didn't just see the celebrities, they saw themselves. Fans weren't emotionally invested because of fame or status. They were drawn to the idea of connection, the kind that doesn't announce itself loudly or demand attention. The quiet glances that feel meaningful, the pauses that suggest unspoken understanding, the moments that hint at something deeper without ever explaining it. That subtlety made the story relatable, because many people have lived versions of it in their own lives. Almost everyone knows what it feels like to experience a connection that never fully defines itself. The what if that lingers long after the moment has passed. The relationship that exists somewhere between friendship and something more. The bond that matters deeply, even without a label. Seeing that reflected into public figures made the story feel personal, not manufactured. Anna's honesty gave the narrative an unexpected depth. Instead of feeding speculation or playing into rumors, she chose to speak in a way that grounded the story in reality, by acknowledging complexity rather than denying or confirming anything. She shifted the focus away from gossip and toward emotional truth. She reminded audiences that real human connections don't always fit neatly into headlines. Her words resonated because they challenged the idea that every relationship needs a clear beginning, middle, and end. Not all stories have dramatic climaxes or public conclusions. Some relationships simply exist for a season. They offer growth, perspective, or clarity, and then they quietly transform into memory. Their value isn't measured by longevity, but by impact. That's why this story lingered. It wasn't fueled by scandal, but by recognition. People saw in it their own unfinished chapters, the connections that shaped them, without ever becoming permanent. And in a culture obsessed with closure, Anna's reflections reminded us of something rare and powerful. Sometimes, the most meaningful stories are the ones that don't end with an answer at all. In the end, Anna de Armas made one thing unmistakably clear. She values truth over headlines. In an industry where silence is often mistaken for mystery, and honesty can be twisted into controversy, her approach stood out. She didn't attempt to control the narrative or satisfy public curiosity. Instead, she chose authenticity even if it meant leaving some questions unanswered. Ono expressed genuine gratitude for the experience itself, focusing not on speculation, but on personal growth. Whatever the true nature of her connection with Tom Cruise may have been, she acknowledged that it played a role in shaping her perspective. Some experiences don't change your life loudly. They don't come with dramatic turning points or public declarations. They change you quietly through reflection, understanding, and emotional maturity. She spoke about the lessons she carried forward, the importance of boundaries, the necessity of self-awareness, and the courage to choose peace over pressure. In a world that constantly demands explanations, choosing calm clarity is an act of strength. Orna made it clear that not every experience needs to be justified to outsiders, and not every connection needs to be defined for public approval. What made her message resonate was that it wasn't defensive. She wasn't trying to protect an image or deny rumors. She wasn't asking for sympathy or attention. Instead, she offered perspective. She reminded audiences that celebrities, despite their status, navigate the same emotional uncertainties as everyone else. The only difference is scaling millions of eyes watching, analyzing, and interpreting every move. Her reflections quietly challenged the way stories are consumed. They asked viewers to consider the human cost behind constant speculation, to recognize that emotions don't disappear just because someone is famous, and to understand that public figures deserve the same emotional space as anyone else to grow, to feel, and to let go without judgment. And maybe that's the real story here. Not a scandal, not a secret romance, but an honest glimpse into how deeply complicated human connections can be, especially when the entire world is trying to define them for you before you've even defined them for yourself.